To change your sump pump out, remove the top of the machine, pull forward the sign, it should pop right out, and turn off your main power switch. And you can remove the bottom door of the machine and set it in a place where it won't get knocked over. Turn off your main city water feed, and it will turn off the toggle switch while you're doing it. Push the little button on the top of the filter housing, that'll release the pressure out of the filters. You have to remove the filters to get to the sump pump. Use the filter wrench and loosen the housing. When you turn the filter off, it's full of water, so it'll be a little bit heavy, so be careful, it might drop down. If you lift up on the filter on the inside, it'll help the water not spill out onto the floor. You can remove the filter and check it to make sure it's in good condition or if it needs to be replaced. Use the filter wrench again and remove the filter in the back of the machine. You can also lift up on the filter, on the carbon filter, or just tip it a little bit and let it dump a little bit of water out so you don't have it spilling on the floor when you pull it out. Your sump pump is located in the bottom behind the filters. You open the little valve on the side to release any pressure or water that might be in there. You can follow the power cord up and unplug it where it plugs into the wiring harness. There's a little white connector that connects the drain tube. It should be just hand tight. Just loosen it, remove the hose, and take your sump pump out. Replace with the new sump pump. Reconnect your hose just like before you plug in the main power source. You'll notice the threads on this are very fine threads, so you have to be careful not to cross thread them. It should easily thread all the way down, and then you just tighten it by hand again. Plug in your main power to the wiring harness again. And the sump pump should be ready to go. Make sure the little valve is turned off so that it'll push the water out. Now you can inspect the filters, make sure they're clean, or put new ones in. In the bottom of the filter housing, reach down in and make sure that the little washer comes out if you change the filters. The new filter, make sure it's a 5 micron carbon filter. Make sure you use gloves too so that you have good clean filters. I want to remove the top ring and place it down in the bottom of the filter housing so I know it goes in the right place. Sometimes if you just put the filter in without putting the ring in the bottom, the ring will fall loose and be in the wrong place. Then I put the filter in and it sits on top of that rubber ring. Make sure the top also has a rubber ring, and inspect your O-ring to make sure it's good and the seat that it sits in is clean of any debris. You can also put a little bit of food grade Vaseline or something on there to make sure it's a little bit slippery, just a tiny bit. You can replace your filter housing. When you start screwing it in, you'll notice that it should thread in very easily, clear until you can't see any more threads on the filter housing itself on the blue part. Once it is snug by hand, you shouldn't be able to see any threads anymore. Put your filter wrench back on and tighten it only about 1/4 of a turn or less, and it should be very tight. Inspect your filter housing for the sediment filter. Make sure there's no debris in it. Sometimes you get even some sand and rocks in it. Inspect and replace your filter. Inspect the O-ring also. Put a little bit of food grade Vaseline on it if it needs to have it. Make sure that the track it sits in is clean, free of debris. Set your O-ring back in place and replace your filter housing. Again, the filter housing should thread on very easily until all the threads are gone. You shouldn't see any threads. It should easily spin on. If it gets bound up, just loosen it and try again. Once it's hand tight again, just put your filter wrench on and tighten it about 1/4 of a turn or less. That should be ready to go. When you turn your machine back on, you'll notice some bubbles going through the flow gauges. That's normal. Check your screen on your spout coming down into the sump pump to make sure it doesn't need to be cleaned out. Turn on your main water feed again and turn on the toggle switch. Turn on your flow valve so that water will flow into the machine. Make sure it all runs good. Listen for the sump pump and make sure it turns on, the new pump you just put in. Turn your water off and check the sump and make sure that it pulls the water out, and then the pump turns off. Then you can replace your bottom door and turn your main power back on. Replace your sign and the top of the machine, and you should be ready to go.